Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 12th meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency. We'll do introductions for the record. So I'm Jim Cooper from the City of Olympia. Dave?
Dave Tobin, Pacific County Commissioner.
Greg?
Greg Brotherton from Jefferson County and Vice Chair.
Joan? Oh, you're muted, Joan.
Joan Cathy, City of Tumwater.
Great. Randy?
Randy Netherland, Mason County Commission.
Great. Thank you. Jeff, can you please walk us through yourself and the staff?
Sure. Jeff Johnston, Executive Director, ORCAA, joined today by Mike Schultz, our Compliance Supervisor, Mark Gooden, Engineering Manager, Odell Hadley, Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Dan Nelson, Communications Manager, Debbie Moody, Office Manager and Public Records Officer, and then I also believe Rob Weiland, Air Quality Specialist too, is listening in with us today. And you see the ORCAA conference room. That's just so I think Chris is in there, just making in case we had any of the public stopping by. But I don't think there's actually anybody in the conference room at this point.
Thank you. Matthew, our counsel.
Yes, Matthew Sonaby, legal counsel for ORCAA.
Thanks for being here.
Actually, Jim, what I think I forgot to mention. So Lynn Harding, our financial services manager, is unfortunately out sick today. And so we won't have so on the agenda, we won't have a financial services manager update. So specifically, I'll give some highlights on some things that I think Lynn would mention if she were here during my executive director update.
Great. Thanks for that update, Jeff.
And Jim, just to let you know, Jill, it looks like is trying to join, but she must have some connection issues because it's hung up in the process.
Okay.
So.
Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know, Dan. All right, so then I'm looking for an approval of the agenda with the one amendment that Jeff just made, which is removing the financial services manager update. Is there a motion?
I'll move to amend or approve today's agenda as changed.
Okay.
Sorry, second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or further amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to the chair report, which I believe the main updates are that we don't meet next month in August. So we're taking that month off because we are only required to do 10 meetings a year. And then in September, there will be a finance committee meeting prior to the board meeting. So if you're on the finance committee, make sure that's on your radar. Debbie sent out the appointment a week or less ago. So. And then I also wanted to just take a moment and thank the staff team for putting on a great shindig at our office last month. It was really fun to get together and celebrate in person in real life. To have a quorum of the board in the same place at the same time was great to see some of you. And but really just wanted to take a minute and thank the staff for the extra work it took to pull that off for the board. So and the organization. So thank you so much.
Great, Jim. Thanks. And let me mention that, so also thank those that were able to be there. It was a really fun event, a good gathering of current and former staff, board members, building tenants, and a few guests. And Dan Scaramucca from Contempo Portrait Studios, one of our building tenants here, was there taking pictures. And so Dan can put a link in the chat if you want to take a look at the pictures from the event, whether you were there or weren't there. Dan Scaramucca did a great job of capturing things, capturing the event. So encourage everyone to take a look at those when you have a chance.
Yeah, thank you to him for doing photos. That's really a great addition. I'm going to pause really quickly and welcome Jill from Grays Harbor County and our other counsel, Jeff Myers. Welcome, both of you. Thanks for being here this morning.
Sorry, I'm late.
No worries, stuff happens, especially when there's technology involved. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then going to public comment. I don't see public in the meeting. Dan or Jeff, are there any public comments we should know about?
None received and nobody's online.
Okay, great. That takes us to our consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll
second.
A motion in 2 seconds for the consent agenda. I heard Jill first for the record. And then is there any questions, comments, or polls? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. So that takes us to our director's report. And we have Mike Schultz as for a compliance update.
Okay, hi everyone. I'll try to go through this fairly quick. I got a few things to cover real fast. You can see B3, I think, is the compliance paperwork. If you have any questions on complaints or anything there, I can address those. And before we get there, I'll go over a couple quick things. One is this is usually what Robert would tell you, but since he's not here today for this, there's code revisor is going to get a copy of a rule change, simple minor 1.11, 1.12. And then you guys will have it in September for the public hearing. And that's just the one that changes the effective dates of the rules. Every year it comes up. Right now, the rules are effective July of 2022. We'll make the rule change to, it'll say July 1 of 2023. So just bringing it up this time because we're not meeting in August. And so September, there'll be a public hearing for that. Again, yearly change, so not a big deal, but that will be there in September. And some good things that were good notes to shine that we get once in a while in compliance. It's we've been working with ORCAA off and on for a while. Those that don't know, it's a group that works with the homeless encampments, and we get a lot of outdoor burn complaints and stuff from those encampments on occasion. And so we built a rapport with them and we coordinate with them. We've met with them a couple times at that ORCAA group, and just the way, just wanted to share that how well it worked. And then we got a couple burn complaints the other day, and Rob called, I think it was Rob, he called, contacted ORCAA. The ORCAA guy went out there, talked to some of the contacts that he had in the homeless encampment, and the burning stopped, at least for the time being, from those. So that's just a good story that, yeah, coordination. And you know, we would like to coordinate with any of the counties and their groups, because for any of these things, it does make things easier since we can't be in 6 counties all at once. And you know, so this is a good example of how that worked, and we want to continue to build those relationships. And then the other one's just a very unique story. We gave somebody a notice of violation, and they were actually happy they got it. They actually wanted to come in and pick it up. And we don't get that very often, and they even thanked us on the way out. The backstory is they had some tenants that were burning, and we issued a violation to the tenant and to the landlord, the owners, and the owners were saying, you know, hey, we're trying to get the tenant out. They've been causing this and other problems. We'll take the NOV. Can we come in and get it? Usually they try to hide from them. This time in ORCAA, we said, yeah, come on in, we'll give it to you. And they took it to the court hearing the next day to explain to the judge why they need to get these people out. And here's an example of it where they're getting violations and the damage is being caused. So a good story where we actually had somebody say, yeah, yes, please give us the NOV, and yes, thank you for giving it to us. Now, when it comes time for penalty assessment, we'll probably suspend the owner's penalty and keep it on the tenant. I mean, yeah, the tenant is causing the burning, so the owner won't have, you know, they won't be penalized for it. They've been trying to get this person to do the right thing and move along. But just wanted to bring that up because we don't often get thanked for one, and people hurriedly coming in to grab a ticket. In this case, they did, and they were happy for it. So, real quick rundown. Any questions you guys might have on any of these quick little stories or anything else, I'm happy to answer.
I had one question for you, Mike, and
Yep.
just about a complaint. It was just very strange to see that someone had complained about the odor at Pandia Moore, the bakery. And I'm just curious, do you know what that, I mean, like, that's usually an asset, I think. Or they burn the bread, or what's going
Well,
on?
you know, and that's the unique thing on that one. We had it was somebody complaining, and it was, they said, a unique smell. It was different. They want to know if we can do any testing, and of course we don't have equipment for testing. They share the facility or the building area. They complained, I believe, twice. I actually talked to the complainant, and then talked to the facility. There was nothing out of the ordinary. So it was one of these things where we couldn't confirm the person who complained. They didn't say it was, bread baking. It was a weird chemical odor. So, we did our due diligence and talked to the bakery there and said, you guys do anything different, anything weird going on? So it basically is one of these mysteries. And after the couple complaints, we haven't had any more. But you're right. It was strange when I got that. I thought, well, I might have to go out and sample, be in person to investigate this. But,
We need some help on the ground,
Oh,
partnership.
okay.
Put the wrong seeds in the batter, yeah.
Yeah. So it was one of those ones, but as you can see, if I remember right, that was early in June. I don't have, I can look at the date, but anyway, we had 2 complaints that we haven't had since. So if, sometimes there's other weird things that go on in an area and people go to the whatever they know is right there. So it could have been something else. And yeah, we did not come to a conclusion on that one. But you're right, that was kind of weird when I took the call. It's like, oh, I usually like the smell of bakeries, but
Well, thank you.
you're welcome.
Good question. Any others? I just had a quick comment that I hope will be compassionate with that tenant, realizing the cost of losing their housing when we assess the possible penalties. I know that's outside of my scope of work, but I feel the need to say it out loud. So.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's kind of turned into more of a they have not been able. They haven't left. They haven't followed through their end of the deal. Yeah, and it's they're not cooperating with the owner. It's more of almost into a situation to where they are kind of just flaunting their, hey, we're here, you can't do anything about it. We're not going to pay the rent. We're going to trash. They brought on some other garbage and other things. And so it's a shame. And if, we don't want anybody to lose their place, but in this case, it wasn't, they were not making it easy for the owners to work with them. They were being very difficult, stubborn, and burning and doing all kinds of stuff and not caring. And so
thanks for that add-on, Mike. That's helpful. Okay, so any other questions for Mike? Great, then let's go to Mark for engineering.
Good morning. Can you hear me all?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so I'll direct you to tab 4 in your board report, and this is the list of the industrial and commercial air permitting activity since the last board meeting. And this is a pending list. So this is going to show both air permits that went out the door and it became final, and as well as ones that are still in the process. I want to apologize up front. Silver Spring shows up here on page 1 3 times. I'm not sure why that is. It's a kind of a database issue. It should only show up there once. So it looks like since the last board meeting, we 3 of them became final. And as always, you could peruse through this list, and if you find ones in your cases in your jurisdiction that you want more information on, I could give you details. So we've been busy with some permitting. We've been more busy with compliance issues. That is the air permitting engineering folks. So we've been working with compliance on several compliance cases, including one where EPA conducted a joint inspection of a plywood facility. And so we are, and they found issues, and they think they found some issues. So we're working with EPA to try to figure out if those issues were actually violations. EPA always has oversight authority for those facilities that are subject to the Code of Federal, some regulation in the Code of Federal Regulations. So they can come down and they can inspect those facilities and they can enforce. They coordinate with us when they do so, and we offer as much guidance as possible. It happens very infrequently, but it does happen. So that was one of the compliance cases that we've been working on, and we've been working on others as well. We've also been busy with projects that are being planned. We call those cases first contact. We have a database. Hopefully by next board meeting, I'll have a report that it'll come your way so you can see the planned projects in our area that are subject to air permits. We're currently working on over 70 inquiries regarding air permits for planned facilities. Now, some of those date back for a long time because, as you know, the planning process sometimes spans multiple years. But part of our function is that we've been working on with guiding sources to get their ducks in a row to submit permit applications for an air permit. And so we've been busy with that. And then I would just like to show you a few pictures. We do regulate composting facilities in our jurisdiction. We have two big ones. We have the Silver Springs Organics facility. We have Brady Trucking up in Mason County. We have a couple others too that don't come to mind, but those are the two big ones. And they actually have substantial emissions. They're not major sources of emissions, but they do have substantial emissions. In fact, at Silver Springs Organics, based on our most recent emissions inventory that we just completed here, Silver Springs Organics emitted over 14 tons of volatile organic compounds and over 7.5 tons of ammonia. And those are just the two key pollutants that we track. In the soup of what they emit, they're also emitting naphthalene and some air toxics as well in small quantities. But that just kind of gives you an idea. The VOC stands for volatile organic compounds, and that contains a whole variety of different air toxics. So the last year on record, which I believe is 2022, there was 14.4 tons of VOC from Silver Springs Organics. Now, part of how we calculate those emissions, because it's difficult to have a monitor on a big old compost facility that spans several acres to monitor their emissions. So it's all done indirectly through what we call emissions factors, preliminary to developing emissions factors. And emissions factors relate the amount of emissions to the amount of compost being made. Upstream of the emissions factors, we need to require these companies to do testing to develop the emissions factors. So I'd just like to quickly share my screen if that's possible. Oh, I guess Dan, if you could allow me to share my screen, and then I'll do so.
You should have access.
Okay, not seeing.
Could be a green
There we
button
go.
up on them.
Okay. Can everybody see that picture there?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the part of the testing apparatus at Silver Springs Organics. We require the test. A third-party company who's certified by EPA conducts the test. In this case, it's a company called Blue Sky out of the Bay Area. And this is a view of the testing apparatus on top of the slab of compost. So we required testing at several locations: the compost pile, the biofilter inlet, and the biofilter outlet. That spherical canister there, that's an evacuated canister. That's where the sample is being taken. This apparatus right here, if you can see my cursor, is allows the as best possible determination of or sampling of gases off the top of the compost pile itself. I'll just scroll through these real quickly. This is the biofilter. Here they're sampling the inlet. This big duct is actually going down to an array of piping that distributes the emissions through the biofilter. So they're testing here the inlet. Here they are testing the biofilter outlet. And
The best use of a card table I've ever seen, I have to say.
Yeah, they were quite resourceful there. So I just wanted to share a few slides. This testing was conducted over several days. This is their sampling train. There's different what they call impingers, where the sample gets passed through to take out certain constituents before it goes to the evacuated canister. Anyways, I just want to show you a few pictures that there's a lot of upfront work to our emissions inventory. Namely, we require these tests, third parties do the testing, we oversee the tests, we review and approve of the test protocol. The tests are used to develop emissions factors, and the emissions factors are what are used in our emissions inventory to determine who's emitting what in our jurisdiction. Not always do we require testing to develop emissions factors. Sometimes there's generic ones, but I just wanted to give you just a quick sampling here of what we have required for Silver Springs Organics. So, and with that, I will end my report.
Thank you, Mark. That was educational. Questions for Mark? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
I like the flux chamber. It makes me think of Back to the Future.
Yeah, right. You're going to put one on your car.
The flux capacitor, right?
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Okay, so we're going to go now to Odell and learn about monitoring. I can't hear you. No, I see your mouth and it says you're not muted. No.
And third time's a
There
charm.
you go. Yay.
I have 3 microphone options and my laptop just randomly picks one to sign in, and I even tested it ahead of time, but it changed, I guess. Okay, so I'm gonna share screen presentation. Okay. Right, can you all see that?
Yes.
All right, so this should be a quick air quality summary for June 2023. Not surprisingly, in June, we had no days that were outside of good. So no moderate or unhealthy days, they were all good. Most sites, we got most of the data. We were missing a couple of days at Chesapeake and Lacey, and also a few in Port Townsend. We had a power outage at Chesapeake that lasted long enough to invalidate that day of data. In Lacey, we had some ongoing communication issues that resulted in some data loss. And Port Townsend was an interesting one. And I want to highlight this for a moment. The power strip that provided power to the monitor and the pump was disconnected. And I was able to have a staff member that I just want to give a shout out to. So Donna at Blue Heron Middle School was able to go in there and diagnose that there was no power and get it reconnected and ongoing. And she was really great to do that for us and save us a drive up there, and willing to go in there and actually, get in the guts of the thing. So I'm not sure what her last name is, but Donna at Blue Heron Middle School, if you ever come across this recording, thank you again. So yeah, other than that, nothing very interesting here in June. All good air quality days at all of our sites. This is our ozone month. Can you guys see that this month? Yay! So this is a plot of ozone in Lacey. That's the dark blue line. These are the hourly data, so you can see them go up and down, and that's the diurnal or the daily variability. It reaches a peak around 4 p.m. every day, and it reaches a low point around midnight every night. And then these lighter bars here up top, those are the daily and hourly temperatures. So you can see that the ozone kind of goes up and down with the temperature. I added the Chesapeake data to show that there is less variability in the temperature at Chesapeake, and also less variability between the afternoon highs and the evening lows at Chesapeake. But the background or the median are very well correlated to Lacey. So you can see that this is sort of a widespread ozone is fairly consistent across a very large region. I mean, this is, you know, the South Peninsula all the way up to the very North Peninsula, and you can see those kind of go up and down with each other, and the trends kind of follow each other. So those shorter daily events, you can see why we have issues with some sites exceeding the NACs and not other sites like Chesapeake. So just kind of throwing this out there. I think it's interesting. Maybe some of you think it's interesting. I don't know.
Hey, Odell, could I just jump in to point out that the current national ambient air quality standards is 70, right?
It is.
So at the top, just for comparison, if you're all wondering, so how are we doing relative to the NACs? We're well below the NACs.
We are, but keep in mind this is June, so we haven't hit the hottest months of the year yet. So let's hope that we stay there. I do want to actually point out that temperature isn't the only thing driving ozone, because you'll notice at the beginning of the month they're pretty tightly correlated, but then you see at the end of the month, even though we had temperatures going way up, our ozone did not go way up. So there are other factors at play, and ozone chemistry is not simple. It's fairly complex. So we can't always say, oh, just because it's hot and sunny, we're going to have high ozone. So that is one other feature to point out here. And then our Grace Harbor saturation study for June, as I've mentioned before, we're moving into July after this. So you'll have one more month of the Grace Harbor saturation study. And then I will stop collecting that data and start working on the final report for that. And also still finishing up the Mason County report for that saturation study. So I do need to play some catch up here. I'm gonna end up really behind. One thing I just want to point out here again, as we've been seeing for the last several months, the highest sites are the Westport coast. That's this light blue line, considerably above the baseline of all the other sites. And then we also see Seabrook, which is usually really low, but that's also come up quite a bit. And I think this is probably summer campfires and all the campgrounds around there that are driving these numbers up. There could be a little bit of extra salt in the air from waves breaking, but we haven't seen that in the winter time when we have more waves. So I really think this is probably mostly campfires. Other than that, most of the sites are pretty well correlated and stay pretty tightly with each other. Other monitoring news, we did our ozone audit at Lacey, that passed. I've continued to do our beta attenuation monitor quality checks. We're continuing to test that instrument for ecology. We also perform quarterly site checks at Aberdeen and Port Townsend. Again, just another shout out in writing to Donna at Blue Heron Middle School. We rescheduled the CPO site upgrade from July to late August due to delays in trailer deliveries. So that was a major shuffle in our calendar. We were going to start that project next week, but that's going to have to be delayed a month. Some supply chain issues in getting parts for our trailer delayed that delivery. Continue to visit Chesapeake, and we did finish installing all of the Ascent instruments last month. Although I just found out from UW that they have to go up and pull the one that we just installed because something broke and the company that makes it has to come out and fix it. So may not be the most robust field instrument, but that's why we test these things. And I also attended the National Ascent meeting. There are, I think, 8 or 9 sites across the country. And so everyone talked about their site and what was unique and special. And Joel Thornton, a professor at UW, talked about Chesapeake and used some studies that I have published in the last several years to talk about the site characteristics. So, you know, we got a little highlight of Chesapeake, which was fun. And that's all I have for June, but I also just wanted to mention that July, right around 4th of July, we had the McEwen fire out by Shelton. That was pretty significant. And we did wake up on July 5th to smoky air. Typically, we expect to wake up and smell some of the residual fireworks smell, but this was definitely a wood smoke smell. And we did have a few other regional fires. There was one up at JBLM. So that was impacting the air quality in the region a little bit more than we typically see after 4th of July. And if you're paying attention, there are also a lot of fires right now up in British Columbia. There's a huge pool of smoke just to the north of us. Luckily, the forecasts show that staying north of us for the foreseeable future, but that can change. And it's a little unnerving to look up there and just see that on the satellite pictures and on the Canadian air quality monitors. So hoping that our winds stay westerly and southerly and keep that away from us. So, and then the last thing, there was a fire that started in Forks, and we did have a member of the community, I believe from the Clallam County, or maybe it was the Forks Department of Health, reach out to us about air quality monitoring in Forks, and it really is a blind spot for us. So we are exploring getting a sensor, if not 2 sensors installed at Forks, and one of the options I'm looking at is Department of Natural Resources has a building regional office up there, and I think that would be a really good location. And that was one that she suggested as well. So hopefully we can remedy that situation, and we'll have, even with the public purple air sensors, there's nothing installed in Forks. So it really is a major blind spot for us. So we're going to try and fix that situation. And I think that is all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions for Odell? Well, thanks for settling a bet with a buddy and I about the 5th of July. He was sure it was fireworks. And I was like, I don't think that fireworks generate that much smoke. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, they can, but it really didn't smell. Fireworks have a very distinct sulfury, chemically smell. And this was, when I woke up and walked outside, I was like, that is definitely wood smoke, wildfire smoke. So, and just looking at Shelton and the smoke that was happening there, and then also JBLM, there was a fire there. So there was smoke regionally. I mean, the fire teams were putting them out, but yeah, it
yeah, I drove to Astoria that morning and it was smoky through Longview and almost all the way to Astoria.
And we were getting a little bit from British Columbia as well. Some of the BC smoke was trickling down through the sound. So there was some of that in addition. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Odell. Okay, Dan for communications. Oh, wow. What day are we on with this? I wonder if Dan's talking and we can't hear him.
Yeah. Hey, Dan,
Oh,
if you're talking.
Yeah,
I can't hear
sorry.
you.
So that screen I was just sharing is the EPA fire and smoke map that Odell mentioned. You can see the plume of, or the big pool of smoke in Canada and drifting east, almost well into Europe. So fortunately, it's staying north of us so far and to the east of us. But anyway, that's a lot of what I've done over the past month is outdoor burning. All of your counties have been calling burn bans left and right, fire safety burn bans. And so they're not our burn bans, but we do what we can to get the word out and share that information in cooperation with the various fire districts and fire marshals in your counties and cities.
Eating paper towels.
So at this point, somebody's got their mic on. Anyway, so we have, all of our 6 counties have outdoor burn bans for residential burning, land clearing burning, and anything greater than that. And 3 counties have actually extended the burn bans to cover all outdoor burning, including campfires / recreational fires. Those are Clallam, Jefferson, and Grays Harbor have recognized that the dangers are great enough that the fire marshals there, in cooperation with the fire chiefs throughout the county, have implemented full outdoor burn bans. So we've been using our social media channels to great effect to get that word out. The other issue, still on the burning side, but on the indoor burning, is while we wrapped up the last wood smoke reduction grant from Ecology at the end of June, they did just release the guidelines and open applications for the next cycle. So statewide, there's $4 million for wood smoke reduction by means of reducing old uncertified wood stoves in the state. So we'll be applying for that at the same or slightly higher level than the previous biennium, and looking to implement some wood stove removals throughout all 6 counties. The plan is to, again, offer it to every resident in all 6 of our counties at some level. So a lot of work on that going on, and we'll keep you posted. Hopefully we're skipping August, so your September meeting, we should have good news about receiving that grant by then.
Cool. Thank you, Dan. Jeff has his hand up. Go ahead.
I had a question. I believe that the several states are suing about the wood stove standards being inadequate to protect against climate change. Have you heard anything about that from Ecology, and whether that's going to affect the wood stove grant program?
It should not affect the wood stove grant program, and there's a lot of discussion on the standards and the testing methods of EPA and where that standard and testing methods for stoves is. So we are still using, I think, the 2020 standard as the baseline for this program. And so we tie any of the new stoves have to be 2020 compliant or better. So that's the guideline. So until that changes in the courts, I imagine that's going to be stuck with us.
Yep. Let me just add that this has been it's a known issue for a number of years, that the EPA, what's called the NSPS, or the National Standard Performance Standards, drawing a blank on exactly what that stands for, but basically performance standards for solid fuel burning devices. It's related to the PM pollution, so it's not really climate change related, but the amount of PM 2.5 that's coming out of the chimneys, and the fact that there's a lot of money going into change outs, and if the cleaner stoves that states are paying to install are not much cleaner than the old ones, then that's obviously a problem. And so states are concerned that the NSPS standards really aren't stringent enough and don't mean very much, and that there's ways to game them, essentially. So we're certainly following it. In addition to a number of states, including Washington, Puget Sound Clean Air Agency was also named on that litigation. So it'll be interesting to kind of follow. In the meantime, state of Alaska and NESCOM, which is a group in the Northeast, has a list of stoves that they recommend using. And so I'm not exactly sure where Ecology is on, say, and what the overlap between that list of stoves versus ones that are available in Washington are. But again, it is definitely something that we're following closely, because of course we want to get the biggest bang for our buck out of these change outs that we're doing, because a lot of money and effort is going into them.
What is our policy on solid fuel? I thought we moved away from that. Maybe my memory is.
Well, it's essentially any wood stove. I mean, it's a solid fuel burning device. That's the category. That's what wood stoves are called, is a solid fuel burning device. So,
right, but we don't allow replacement with one, do we? We only allow replacement with electric and gas.
Well, I mean, if we have a program for a recycle award, and so you can replace it with, or you can use that $500 with anything that you want to use it for. So somebody might go out and buy another stove.
Two different lines.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
right. And we're contemplating in the next year, actually allowing somebody to use a pellet stove. So there'll be the most award will be for changing out for an electric heat pump. There will still be an option to change to a gas furnace, and then also a pellet stove is what we're contemplating. So those are discussions that we're having. And Dan, I don't know if you want to add more.
Yeah, so that's the plan is to, so the previous program that just closed had a replacement component for all of Thurston County and the urban core of Mason County around Shelton. And that was for replacement. So replacement in Thurston County with gas or electric heat appliances, and in Mason County, because they don't have natural gas available, we allowed pellet stove as a replacement appliance there. The plan now going forward, and part of, or largely because we want to make sure people are getting the most economically and best fit for their needs, but also because of some of the concerns about the climate impacts of natural gas, we're going to match pellet stove incentive at the same level as natural gas propane levels. And we'll do that for all of Mason County, all of Thurston County, and hopefully we'll get the state to agree to cover the eastern halves of Jefferson and Clallam County with that program as well. And then everywhere else, including those areas, will be open for the recycle award, which is literally just taking an old uncertified wood stove out and getting it certified destroyed by a metal scrapper, and we provide a $500 reward for that, and they can use that for anything from a trip to the city or applying it to a new appliance. So what they do with that $500 is up to them.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but it would benefit me to have a better understanding of those different emissions, like in some sort of side-by-side comparison with neighborhood impact, and where the board's policy power lies in that discussion and those grants. Because I don't know that I want to go so far as to say I want consistent policy because of what you said around availability of heating appliances in differences, but I think it would be good for us to, at least at a high level, have a better understanding of the differences. Is that something we could work on for the fall?
We certainly can, and we have those numbers. And I mean, just off the top of my head, I know I want to say a modern pellet stove has, I want to say 0.2 micrograms per hour of PM pollution, and a modern wood stove is closer to 20 micrograms. So it's a orders of magnitude cleaner.
Right. And well, what I'm thinking is like maybe like more of the layman's comparison that could become something more educational for the public as they decide what to, you know, put in versus what's available, knowing that there's like cost and environmental considerations for pretty much everyone at this point. So cool. Okay. I appreciate that. Randy?
Yeah, I'd like to get a breakdown of that because I just decided as we're sitting here right now that I'm going to make that one a priority this year for me. So if you can get me the selling points on how to implement and put it in, let's do that. And let me make that happen a lot more here in Mason County. I've left it alone all these years, and I think it's time to pick it up.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll have to wait to see what we're actually approved by the state for, but we can certainly provide you the information on the emissions and the factors that go into that decision, Jim.
Cool, thank you. And I'll just throw out for other jurisdictions, in Olympia right now, we're running a heat pump group purchasing program. And that might be something, Randy, to think about as you're looking at what other opportunities there are in Mason County as well. It brings the price down to be pretty good. Okay.
Just one thing on that. I know City of Olympia has had a number of webinars on this and outreach efforts related to their heat pump program. So I can, in the chat, I can put a link to a video that talks about their program if folks would be interested in that.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. Seems like a pretty light lift for the city, other, some staff time to coordinate, but it's beneficial to the residents. Okay, anything else for Dan? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to Jeff for the executive director's report.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. And just a reminder, as I mentioned earlier, so Lynn is out sick today. So I'll be giving just a brief update for things that I think she would have mentioned if she'd been here. So she's been busy with a number of things, of course, the usual payroll, accounts payable, purchasing duties, but other things include working on the fiscal year 2023 closeout. And I don't have the exact numbers here in front of me, but I can say that rather than taking $175,000 from our contingency funds as we had planned based on the budget that you approved a little over a year ago, we'll be putting somewhere between 100 and 200,000 into our contingency funds. So again, as we've talked about, as usual, we expect to use some of our contingency funds, but we end up putting more in. And in this past year, it was due to a number of factors. Higher than normal penalties that we collected. We also have delayed purchasing. Well, we had a vehicle purchase budgeted last year for a variety of reasons. We didn't actually move forward. We'll be doing that here very soon. So that was savings that from expense we didn't have. Yeah, so that's good news. Another thing that Lynn's been working on is getting a contract in place to replace some of our siding on the east side of the building. It's been pretty time consuming to get the bids, get all the paperwork in order, but I think we almost have a contract in place for that. So that's good. And then, as Dan mentioned, in terms of the wood stove grants, there's been a variety of other grants that are changing over now, sort of work to close out previous grant cycle and get new grant materials submitted specifically to Department of Ecology. So that's been taking Lynn's time as well. So then moving on to my executive director update, get a number of things going on. Mark made reference a few minutes ago to some of the emissions inventory work. So again, emissions inventory, that's information about how much pollution our sources emit. And so there's a pretty big effort every year to collect that information. As board members probably remember, or those of you that were with us, I think last spring, maybe Jennifer DeMay gave a presentation on emissions inventories, what they are and how we use that information. Well, some of the ways we use it is to calculate our registration fees and also our air operating permit fees. And so Jennifer DeMay and Lauren Wybrew, two of our engineering team, do the majority of the emissions inventory work. And that information has now been headed off to Debbie, or handed to Debbie. And so the billing will go out for our registration and our AOP sources by around August 1st. So, and that occurred to me, I don't know if that's something that would be of interest to the board, is more information about how we use the emissions inventory information to calculate fees for our registered sources and our air operating permit sources. I don't know, would that be of interest? I'm seeing some heads nod. So, okay, well, let me talk to the team here and we'll try to put something together maybe for later in the fall at some point, just so you all have a little bit better sense of how that information is used. Let's see, other things, working with the team to decide how to use the additional space upstairs. For those that were here in June, maybe you had a tour of some empty rooms upstairs. Well, I've decided that we're going to use Suite 202 as a records and an archive room. At this point, we've got records kind of scattered in a number of places throughout our offices. A lot of them are in the upstairs conference room, but so we'll be moving them, consolidating them into currently the empty room upstairs. So I'm excited about that. Also mentioned a vehicle a few minutes ago. So Robert's been working on researching a new fleet vehicle. So hoping to make a purchase here in the coming week or so. I had really hoped that ORCAA could start electrifying our fleet, and definitely want to move in that direction, but just because of the lack of availability of vehicles at this point, also the complication of figuring out a charging station, both for, just a lot of details. I think our next vehicle is going to be a hybrid, but then hoping that that can then allow us to, the vehicles we purchase after that can be at least a few EVs in the fleet. With the size of our jurisdiction, I think we'll likely always need one or two either plug-in hybrids or traditional fueled vehicles, just because of the distance, say, to get up to Chica Peak and back, or at least until the charging network gets to be a lot more robust around our jurisdiction. But so that's been something we're hopefully going to be moving forward. We'll hope to post information on our website about that vehicle purchase here in the coming days. Let's see. So last month I mentioned that we'd been making good progress on settling some long-standing penalties with a few of our air operating permit sources. So we did settle with Westport LLC. That's again the company that makes the large luxury yachts. They've got facilities in Westport, but also up in Port Angeles. So when that settlement was reflected in the compliance report last month, and I think we had some short discussion about that. But in addition to that, just in the past few weeks, we finally reached a written settlement with the McKinley Paper Company up in Port Angeles. And so that was a relatively large settlement of close to $350,000. So again, more money to help the budget. And I'm really glad that that settlement is done. We're currently working on, there's one more large source that we have, large complex compliance case. We'll be working with them over the coming weeks. And so hopefully perhaps in September, I'll have some good news about that facility. So, but as I mentioned, we're putting money back into our contingency funds in part due to these settlements. So that'll be funds that we can, so I think we'll be coming to you at some point in the future with some proposals about what we want to do with some of these extra funds. So other than that, just busy, just the day-to-day business of running a small agency. A lot of projects are advancing, but that's all I had, unless you have any good questions about what I've talked about or anything else.
Just one, Jeff. As you move records, are you able to eliminate paper in mass and maybe bring on extra help to do some scanning?
So yeah, so I mean, that's part, you probably remember that in fiscal year 2023, we brought on a records clerk. So Tiffany Flores has been with us. So she joined just last December. So she's working closely with Debbie and with Jackie and others, and so making great progress. So we've had one pickup from the LeMay shredding truck, and we're looking to do more. Also, boxes will be going to state archives. So yes, we are definitely thinning things down. There's a lot of scanning going on. We are looking at moving towards an electronic content management system and going more electronic, but again, it's a process. So that's definitely where we're headed, but we're wanting to make sure that our records are in order kind of as we work towards that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I just say move them once out to the recycle bin.
Yes, yeah, things, yeah, absolutely. Things that we can do that with, that where we've met the retention schedule and that we can get rid of, things that haven't met the retention schedule, or, and again, things that, well, again, we're working closely with state archives so that then at least it's not our problem anymore. It's the problem of state archives to deal with.
Doesn't electronic meet the retention schedule? I mean, I would say that to me, that electronic content management system is the key, because it gets us out of records requests because it can be live, and it meets the obligations of the state around records retention. There's no paper law, is there?
No, but it gets complicated in terms of, and Jeff, maybe you can jump in if needed, but that what's the document of record? And so sometimes that's a paper document, and I'm not sure exactly the process of then, how easy is it to then just because you have an electronic version of it doesn't necessarily mean that you might not have to produce a paper version if that was the document of record. So
it's a question of what is the original record and the primary record, and Secretary of State's records retention up until a couple of years ago, and they may have updated it since, but they had some concerns about scanning things and the storage media that you were scanning things and making sure that there was appropriate backup, so that especially when you're dealing with essential records, that there is a permanent copy of or a permanent original authentic record. So they don't necessarily require paper, but they require that you have pretty stringent requirements for things which are electronic copies of records.
That makes sense. So we have to get to the point where we keep things on the computer and don't ever print them and sign them electronically and all those other things, right? Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that clarification, because it bothers me immensely to spend real estate money on paper storage. So
yeah, well, and also, I mean, updating our system so that folks can submit things to us electronically. I mean, there's just a lot of pieces that have to go along with this. So so we're heading there, but it's complicated. So
thank you for that rabbit hole. I appreciate it. Okay, anything else for Jeff? Okay, that brings us to the end of our regular agenda. Is there anything for the good of the order? Anything for executive session? I don't believe so. No? Okay, hearing that, then we are going to adjourn for this month, and remember, just a reminder that we will not meet again until September, when we will have our regularly scheduled business meeting of the board. So take care, everyone. Have a great summer. We are adjourned.
Have a great summer.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
See you in September.